What is going on, all you wonderful Lake Plushers out there? It is I, Stuart, here, once again with another review for you. This time I'm going to be talking about Superman and Lois Season 3, Episode number 7. Another fantastic episode, everyone, but, I will say this episode probably shouldn't have been called Superman and Lois. It really should have been called Clark and Lois, because for the first time we get a full episode with no Superman at all. And you know what? I'm totally okay with it, because this was also a really well-written episode for the most part. I do have a couple of nitpicks here and there, but I will get into those as I talk about the episode. Now, I'm not going to go in chronological order. I'm going to kind of do things like I usually do, which is I'm going to be talking about the different storylines that happen within the episode, and I'm going to be going in order from like kind of the lowest stakes to the highest stakes, which I'll get to at the very end of this review. So the first, very low stake kind of thing that happens in this episode was the relationship between Sarah and Chrissy. Now, in last week's episode, the whole Cushing family found out about Kyle and Chrissy. And this kind of surprised me, because I honestly kind of thought they already knew about this, especially because we saw Kyle and Chrissy together during that one, Valentine's Day dance, and we even see them dancing together. But I guess they just assumed that they were hanging out as friends or something like that. But regardless, it was found out by everyone last week that the two of them are an item, and Sarah isn't necessarily too happy about this until she eventually has a little bonding moment with Chrissy, and the two of them kind of become friends. Now, I gotta be totally honest with you guys. I haven't been really liking Sarah too much this season. She's kind of been coming off a little bit too much as a know-it-all, and just overall like a major kind of brat. But in this episode, I will say she was a lot more likable, which surprised me, because in the very beginning of the episode, I thought it was going to be another episode where I was just going to be completely annoyed with her all the way through. But by the end of it, I do think that, Sarah was very mature by being able to kind of overcome her emotions and be able to actually get to know Chrissy as a person, and the two of them becoming friends, I thought was a very nice touch. The other thing I really like is how this kind of led to her helping her mother, okay? Because, Lana in the very beginning of the episode told Sarah to give Chrissy a chance, and Sarah did so, which unknowing to Lana was going to upset, herself. It kind of upset Lana, not like in a how dare you become friends with someone else. It was more like a wow, I didn't expect it to kind of hurt this much that everyone's moving on. But what I like about this is that Lana's very honest with her thoughts, and this kind of helps Sarah be able to help her at the end with being able to not necessarily fully move on, but at least take baby steps into moving on, basically, in the long run. So I did really like that kind of the way that both Lana and Sarah kind of helped lift each other up in this episode and helped make each other better people, I guess you could say. There are a lot of great Lana and Sarah moments throughout this entire season, some not so good, but I do think that overall, when it comes to the series as a whole, the good definitely outweighs the bad. I think when the two actresses are working together, they really do feel like a real mother and daughter. They work amazing together, and I think this is one of those episodes that really shows the strength from both of them. The other storyline, this was another one I thought I was not going to like, because it follows that TV trope that just is so overdone, which is of course the, I guess you would call it the shotgun dad meeting the boyfriend. But I will say it was handled a lot better in this than it has been in the past. Okay. Because, a lot of times, you have the douchebag dad being like, hey, how dare you? And, the boyfriend is always just usually not even doing anything, and I don't know, it's so overdone is what I'm trying to get at, and we kind of have that playing out in this episode. But the big difference is that John Henry Irons is actually trying to be a cool dad. It's just that, as he puts it, his fatherly instincts that he didn't even know he had kind of kick in whenever he sees Natalie and Mateo together, and he gets a little overprotective. But it's a flaw that he admits that he has, and he even admits it to Mateo at the very end of the episode, which I thought was extremely mature of him to do. And I do kind of look forward to, based on what we see at the very end of the episode, seeing where this, is going to lead. because oh boy, does it get kind of good. But anyways, so yeah, that's basically kind of the gist of it. Natalie brings Mateo over for lunch. John Henry Irons is kind of an asshole towards Mateo at first, but then kind of overcomes like his fatherly instincts in order to basically take first steps into actually getting to know Mateo as a person. And yeah, so the next part of this episode, and this is where we actually get into the plot heavy stuff. Lois and Pia at the hospital, basically getting it is Pia's final treatment with chemo, and Lois basically is really starting to bond with her. But as the two of them are becoming friends, a lot of Lois's like investigating report. What's that term called? Investigative journalism or journalist? Yeah, her instincts as a journalist kick in, is what I'm trying to say. And even though she is definitely trying to get to know Pia better as a person, she can't help but ask questions that she would normally ask as a journalist, such as her relationship with Bruno Mannheim. And this for Pia, comes off as Lois just trying to get answers. And while this is going on, we see flashbacks with Pia and Bruno Mannheim, and we do find out like exactly how it is that they, took over Intergang together and, became a couple. And essentially, this is where I'm very curious about how things are going to be playing out later on. But we do find out that they worked together to kill the previous boss of Intergang, which one thing I thought was very interesting about the scene is that this is when we learned that Pia actually did not get her powers from the cancer treatment that Bruno has been given to the other prisoners. She actually had her powers for a while, so I'm very curious if we're going to learn the origins of how she got these powers and whether or not they're related to her cancer, or if she's just one of those born metahumans in the series. Although if that is the case, it does bring in a lot of questions. I mean, I'm going to be honest, this show has been very inconsistent about like what kind of heroes already live in this universe and what kind don't, because we did have Sam Lane say that Superman was the only superhero on this earth, but then we also have some contradicting moments, like John Diggle mentioning Oliver Queen, and then even Sam Lane in the first episode mentioning an entire school of metahumans. So again, this show's like overall world is very confusing. I feel like you could almost retcon that line where Sam Lane says that Superman's the only hero on this earth and just assume that that scene was really more for the audience than it was for the characters, as it was just him trying to say we're not in the Arrowverse, but not necessarily trying to say that Superman is the only hero in that world. I don't know. I wish this show would just make it kind of more clear on what kind of characters exist in this universe and what kind don't, because they're making it extremely confusing. I think it would have just been better off if they kept it in the Arrowverse, but dear God, I went on this rant way longer than I intended to. All this to say that Pia had her powers for quite some time now, and we're not exactly sure how she got them, but she used them to take over the previous leader of Intergang, which earlier we had heard in the season he was killed by Lex Luthor, so now we know that is not the case, so I'm very curious to find out how they were able to pin that murder on Lex Luthor. But regardless, this is how Bruno Mannheim became the leader of Intergang. And after this flashback, we continue to see Lois basically kind of asking her questions and her not being very thrilled about this. So she, basically kind of leaves the area to go sit by herself. And this is what makes Lois actually feel really bad about, basically not treating her like a friend, feeling like she was a shitty friend for doing so. And we then get Lois going to Pia in order to apologize, and we get a very similar moment to her in season 1 with, I believe it was with, was it Chrissy or Lana? It was, I do remember she kind of mentions how like she's not the best when it comes to, making friends, because a lot of times her journalistic instincts kind of kick in and she forgets how to like actually treat friends like actual friends. It's not the first time we've heard something like this from Lois Lane, because we heard this in season 1, so it is kind of interesting to see it coming back. And even though she's of course gotten a lot better since then, the journalist part of her does kind of kick in every now and then, and luckily Pia does kind of forgive her, but then also feels really bad herself because she then admits that she has been hiding something from Lois this whole time as well. We cut to Clark, who's investigating Bruno Mannheim because Lois is too sick to do so herself. So Clark is basically interviewing him, trying to ask all these questions about all these, allegations against him, which is, of course, the experimentations that he's done on all these criminals in order to find this cure for cancer. And I do love the kind of, big difference between Bruno Mannheim and Clark Kent. Bruno Mannheim trying to claim that, hey, if you were in my position, you would do anything you could in order to save your wife, no matter what it would cost. And that's what he's telling Superman. But something interesting comes up at the end of the episode that I'll definitely get into about this big difference between Bruno and Clark. But basically, throughout this interview, Clark eventually pieces it together by looking at the fact that Bruno Mannheim, everything he's ever invested in has always earned a profit, the only exception being his research on cancer. Bruno Mannheim, of course, is trying to claim, why would I want to profit off of, cancer research? But as Clark kind of thinks about it, he realizes that the only reason he would be this invested in something that isn't turning a profit is if he had someone that he cared about getting treatment. And this is when it kind of gets pieced together that Bruno Mannheim and Pia are in a relationship together. And this is what I thought was so interesting about the end of the episode, is that seemingly Lois Lane and Pia keep their friendship going on after Pia's final treatment. Because we see them at kind of a celebration party where basically they're celebrating the final treatment being done and hopefully Pia being cancer free. And it's kind of interesting because, on the one hand, as people, they seem to be getting along just fine. They seem to understand that Bruno Mannheim isn't evil. He's doing what he thinks is necessary, but, regardless, he's still breaking the law and he's still, experimenting on all these different prisoners, which can in turn also lead to collateral damage, as we see with Atom Man, causing other people to get hurt as well. So there's this big kind of, morality struggle between Lois and Clark on what to tell the, public about this. We find out the reason that Bruno and Pia kept their relationship a secret and why Lois wasn't able to figure this out earlier was because they had been hiding it, because Bruno Mannheim didn't want his reputation to bring down Pia as well. This was a really good twist, and I think it was handled extremely well. And I do find it interesting that Pia and Lois kept their friendship at the end of this, and I'm curious to see where it goes on whether or not Clark and Lois decide to go public with this story, and whether or not they're ever going to find out that Pia is actually Onomatopoeia, which, since we don't really know that character's name in this universe, for all we know, they're probably not even going by that name, Onomatopoeia, but regardless, it seems like Lois and Clark are a bit hesitant to go forward with this story, but I feel like the moment they find out that Pia is the person, with the metahuman powers, then that might be what changes their mind and causes them to go forward with the public about this information. But this is definitely a wait and see. The other thing they have to keep in mind is that if they piss off Bruno Mannheim now, Bruno Mannheim basically knows exactly who their family is. And if, he tries to, let's say, attack Johnathan and Jordan Kent, that might cause either Superman or Jordan to, use their powers, with instinct in order to protect themselves. And that might expose who they are. So I'm very curious to see where they go with that, because they're both sides are definitely treading on dangerous ground right now. And I'm really excited to see how that all pays off. Now, the final part of the episode I gotta talk about is, of course, the Johnathan and Jordan Kent storyline, because they don't believe that things are going as well as Clark and Lois are claiming. As they do their own investigation, they first go into the Fortress of Solitude, where they find out that even though Clark's Kryptonian mother, has suggested that the treatment is likely not going to work on Lois, we find out that they haven't actually looked at every possibility in the Fortress of Solitude, and that there might actually be a chance to save her using that Kryptonian technology. And this doesn't get better for Clark when they do their own investigating around and find that Lois actually had, which we saw in the previous episode, Lois working on a will and, kind of goodbye letters, just to prepare for the worst case scenario. And when Johnathan and Jordan can't find these, they think it's, to them, it looks like Lois and Clark have been keeping secrets from them. And in a way they have. Basically, we find out that Lois and Clark haven't been 100% honest about how bad the cancer really is and how the treatment isn't helping as much as they were hoping. But regardless, this leads to basically Johnathan lashing out at Clark, saying stuff that that Johnathan would never actually say, if he had a moment of thought. But again, going back to kind of like the theme of the episode, which is like characters kind of acting on emotion, I think Johnathan Kent definitely fits that, because he lashes out at Clark, saying these things that he would never actually mean. But I like that Clark doesn't take it personal, and that both he and Lois just totally understand what Johnathan is going through, and totally understand that it could come off as the two of them basically lying this entire time. But we do have a good heart-to-heart moment with them kind of admitting that things aren't going as well as they were hoping, but but keep trying to be as optimistic as possible while preparing for the worst. We also have this really cool moment with Clark and Johnathan at the end, where Johnathan basically kind of refers to himself and Lois as humans, like during this big, lashing out that he does against Clark earlier. But Clark basically kind of tells Johnathan something interesting when he tells Johnathan, just remember, your brother Jordan is as much human as you are, and you are as much Kryptonian as he is, which I thought was an absolutely beautiful line to end on with the two of them. But yeah, guys, overall, a really good episode. Almost forgot to talk about that big twist at the end, which is of course Mateo heading back to Metropolis, and we see that Mateo's parents are indeed Bruno Mannheim and Pia, and he talks about how excited he is for the two of them to meet Natalie. So judging by the title of the next episode, which is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I would be very interested to find out whether or not Natalie actually knows Bruno Mannheim, or at least knows what he looks like, because I'm not sure, because we haven't seen John Henry Irons like talking to Natalie about everything that's been going on with Bruno Mannheim. So I am very curious to find out what Natalie actually knows so far, if she knows she's in danger the moment she arrives, or if she's going to have to piece it together herself, and it takes her a minute to realize that she may not be in the safest place when she goes to dinner with them. Very excited about that. The other thing I almost forgot to mention was the Fortress of Solitude, and going back to that comparison between Clark and Bruno Mannheim. So the big thing is that Bruno Mannheim says that if Clark was in his position, he would do anything that he could in order to save Lois. But we find out that yes, there is a possibility that the Kryptonian technology could actually help Lois Lane. However, the reason that they decide not to go forward with it is because it would be unfair for them to use that Kryptonian technology just for Lois Lane and not share it with the world. And they're worried that if they share that technology with the world, there's a lot of danger that it could lead to, which kind of makes sense. Now I have heard people say that, well, why not just share, the cure for cancer and nothing else? But the thing is, I feel like a lot of technology can be universal. So I feel like Kryptonian technology might be one of those things. So something that can cure cancer, it's not too far-fetched to say that with Kryptonian technology, that same technology that can cure cancer can also be used for weapons of mass destruction. I know it sounds silly to say, but I think that is like the big concern that Clark really has with sharing that technology with the world, which to my opinion is totally valid. So I honestly, there's a moral debate there. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think there's really a right or a wrong answer when it comes to whether or not Clark should be sharing this technology with the world. However, I do think this is a very Superman-like decision. It makes total sense that Superman isn't 100% sure whether or not he would want to share that with the world. It makes sense that Superman would be the one to say, hey, there's a lot of danger with what people could do with this kind of technology. So honestly, I don't know what side I would be on, because, watching it as a viewer, it's very different from actually being in Clark Kent's shoes, but I can definitely see where Clark Kent is coming from. So to me, that explanation did not bother me at all, but if it did bother other people, I totally get it. But overall, guys, this was another really fantastic episode. But of course, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think. So definitely let me know your thoughts on the episode in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But of course, guys, above all, don't forget to keep it A+, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.